All right. You guys, come on up. I'm going to ask the panelists to come in. Round of applause for these guys. You may notice somebody here that you've seen before. Does anybody recognize the face? So you guys take a seat. I'm just going to do a quick little who they are. If you really want to know about these guys, look them up on the internet. I'm sure you can find them. It's like you've all got phones in your pockets, so that shouldn't be too hard. So let's start out way over there. That's Ben Nowak, who's the founder and CEO of Cinamaker. Good to see you. Next to him, Marc Angelo Coppola, storyteller, video podcaster, and the guy behind that video. Lindsay next to him, host of Office Hours Global. Great to be on stage with Alex again. And Andy Carluccio, who is from Zoom. So let's jump into it. I want to start talking about the state of productions, and we talk about live, we'll talk about in the studio. But let's talk with live first. And Lindsay has been doing live video for longer than most of us can remember our names. And Alex, talk about your process now for live video production.
Well, we still use a lot of different ways of doing live video. So we're still showing up at some locations and doing, everything, multi-camera, going out. And one of the things we're looking at now is we do transmission to theaters. So we actually can, IMAX has 210 theaters that are on a live network, and so you can actually go out to all of those theaters. But on a day-to-day basis, we're mostly using Zoom.
Really?
So most of our office hours, which is what we do every day, is we go out 2 hours a day. We have a virtual production that's built, from people all over the world, and we are able to, do all of that sitting on top of the Zoom platform. We're using Zoom ISO to pull all the feeds out. And so it is after COVID, when we probably did, during COVID, we probably did between 600 and 800 shows. And you kind of, when you have to do a physical load-in now, you're like,
oh, really do I have?
How do I do that again? And can we just do this over Zoom? So that's kind of where it's at right now.
Marc, talk a little bit about what you do on the live side, what your production workflow looks like, whether it's live or even if it's on demand.
Yeah, I think it's changed over time. So I started video podcasting in 2013, and I was doing it with Skype, and then I started kind of going the old way of setting up DSLRs and essentially taking the cards out and bringing it to an editor and doing that whole process. And obviously, that was just incredibly time-consuming. It was painful in every way, and it focused on the ability to constantly have talent available and always having these cameras that you have to charge and think about and all these different things. And where that's evolved to now is I actually use Cinamaker to produce and live switch between all the different camera angles and all the different components that go with that. So it makes making the show significantly easier in every way.
And how do you think about the live production side, the state of it, what you guys are building with Cinamaker?
I think that in general, there's a lot of transformation going on in this industry, and we like to think that we kind of had a vision of how things should be and how things are going. So we brought together a solution to do, to basically simplify a lot of the more traditional complex processes. But
move your mic up a little closer to your mouth. There you go.
We're continuing to evolve with the industry and further innovation.
Cool, and so Andy, for you on the Zoom side, you were doing these default events at the beginning of COVID. I remember using the webinar platform, and it was basic at the beginning of COVID and the pandemic, but it's come a long way. Talk about the state of live video right now from your perspective.
So at the start of the pandemic, I was external to Zoom. I had a startup called Liminal, and Liminal was a production company, and I agreed with your assessment at the time that the tools required to do quality production, especially at the broadcast level, weren't there. So we built them using the Zoom developer platform. We created tools called Zoom OSC and Zoom ISO, which allowed our production company to produce really good events, and then we opened it up and we allowed anybody to go grab those tools. Zoom acquired the company, and now I work with Zoom on making that technology available to all developers, including Cinamaker. We'll talk more about that, but from my perspective, it's about getting tool sets that allow us to use the products that we know and love and want to be able to use in the workflows that empower them, but supersize them with live activations and remote contribution.
Well, go ahead, just jump in.
I was just going to say that, we got to know each other before Andy was at Zoom when he was working on these, because for years, I did about 1,000 Google Hangouts. We were the white glove team for Google, and so we did all these Hangouts, and what we said was, what we really need is a box. It just takes all the feeds that are on the server and just pushes them out as SDI. And we just were desperate for that. At one point I owned 6 of the Skype TX boxes so that we could pull everybody out and do all the crossing. And the fact that we can now do that where everyone's just joining Zoom and we can take the ISOs is completely revolutionized our workflow.
So let's talk a little bit about state of the art. And we are sitting at Creator Squared here, so there's a lot of sort of traditional video all around us, but there's also a lot of creator-oriented and creator-forward stuff. I'd love to think a little bit with all of you about the state of live video, production, streaming, but think a little bit on the creator side, maybe contrast that with what you see on the traditional side. And I'm just going to go from right wing to left guard. I'm not sure if that works, but Ben, we'll start with you.
All right. So the state of the industry, as I mentioned, is in transformation. We think there are unique workflows and better ways to do things in a more integrated manner. And live production has been fairly simple. You've been fairly limited to your live cut, and then you still had to do a lot of the traditional work for post. And that's really where we focused our innovation, is really cutting out all that post-production and allowing people to live cut over and over.
How do you think about creators versus traditional media? Are they the same? Are they different? Are the needs like overlapping but not completely orthogonal?
I mean, I think I can jump in on that one. I think it's taking over. In my personal opinion, creators are the future of production. The hard part was, how do you increase the speed from hitting record to hitting publish? And that was the biggest challenge. And then the ability to do that in a blended way. So to me, the biggest change...
Okay, what do you mean by blended?
So blended or hybrid is the ability to have a studio, aka have guests that come in, think Joe Rogan podcast or something of that nature, have them sit in front of you and produce content in a fast, easy, affordable way. Okay, great, you could do that. There's tons of solutions, and there's a lot of hardware that does that. Great. Now the next thing was, what about making a digital version, or something, bringing guests in on Zoom? Okay, great, we can figure that out. Zoom figured that out. There's lots of other solutions out there that figure that out. But the hybrid of both, the ability to say, okay, I want to run a show where I have a guest in front of me, I want to bring in an expert from halfway around the world, I want to be able to stream this live, or I want to be able to record this, and not only make the long format content, but then what the creator economy is really turning into is taking that long format show and then chopping it into a bunch of smaller pieces of content, right? You think Gary V's production pyramid or all that kind of stuff. You take the long show, make shorter clips that promote the longer show and that grow the entire the economy. Because at the end of the day, the attention is on social media. The attention is where people are scrolling right now and finding this content through the algorithms, through YouTube or whatever else.
And for us, I think that what creators are doing is they actually are doing the online version a lot better than the broadcasters. Broadcasters, for whatever reason, have not invested in their cameras, their mics, their lights for all their remote participants. And we spend a lot of time. We have kits flying all over the world to make sure that everything from Insta360 links all the way up to FR7s, and we're sending those kits out to make sure that people look and sound great. And creators, when I bring a creator into a virtual event, I know that they're going to look good and sound good because they've got these great cameras, they've got mics, they understand that's important. When I watch TV, it's almost intolerable. Yes. Like it is like I opened up my laptop and I'm using my built-in mic and it's absurd. And what happens is that it really undermines what we think of the people that are talking. When you don't invest in that, you're undermining your own message.
I definitely think that we are in the midst of the democratization of media, and it's being led by creators, right? The ability I think all of us are storytellers at heart, and I think that the ability to have tools that allow us to communicate that story to a global audience is giving us a different perspective on what it means to be media. As Alex said, I have another boost of confidence whenever I see a creator participating in this area. They're pushing the tools, they're doing the research, they're putting in the work, and they're the next generation of storytellers.
Yeah, I want to go back to a couple things we talked about. First of all, talking about the kit, Alex. What's in the kit?
So it depends on, so we solve the problems in a different way depending on the scale. But the first thing that we solve is audio, then we solve their internet, then we solve their lights, then their camera, then their background. So in audio, a lot of times we're sending out a MV7 microphone
Sure MV7
Sure
microphone,
MV7,
yep.
and it has XLR because the next step for the bigger kits is we run that into a mix of sound devices mixed pre with noise assist, and that's going to clean up a bunch of other things. Ethernet. So Ethernet, I know it sounds like the past, but your Wi-Fi is dropping frames constantly. So we get the people off of that. For cameras, it's sometimes if they have a good iPhone, a newer iPhone, it actually looks better than most of the web cameras. But otherwise, we're sending out Link 360s are typically our go-to camera now because they're PTZs and we can control them through Zoom. So we can literally get in Zoom and move them around.
Really?
Yeah.
Link
And so,
360, that's awesome.
and then we've done a lot of kits with the Blackmagic 6Ks. We're starting to use FX30s from Sony. And for the biggest kits that we're designing for this fall, they're Sony FR7s, which are full frame PTZs. So they have an FX6 sensor with a PTZ head.
What if somebody doesn't have Ethernet coming to their little place where they're doing
They
their
have
little talk?
Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So at a hotel, you sometimes just have to deal with it. A lot of times, though, the hotel somewhere in the building has Ethernet, and we find it. Or we find the cellular actually works better than Wi-Fi. So we would rather you could use the cellular connection. So we have to, but we'll have people that will talk about they'll be in the house and they're like, well, the router's too far away, and we're like, how far? And they're like 70 feet, and they're like, we just send them a cable, drop ship it from Amazon, there you go.
All right, so this sounds like an amazing little drop ship to do this. Do you have trouble getting them back?
There are tricks to that. So there.
Like
so,
what? Tell
so,
us. Secrets from Alex.
Yeah, so here that we get most of our kits back, not all of them, but we calculate that into the cost. The big thing is number one is you ship it so that it's easy to repack. So a lot of times you're tempted to make everything really condensed. We ship it so that it's really easy to understand where there's foam or other things. You understand where everything goes, so it's easy for some, because you have to remember that they never saw it before. So they put those in. And then the second thing is, this is the thing that holds up most of them. We insert tape and a FedEx slip. Those are the thing that's really, really important, because people are like, oh, I didn't send it out because I didn't have any tape. Like tape for a book, but so it's literally double the return, double the return rate just by putting tape into the box.
That is wild.
So, and then you send them a FedEx, and then you call them the day of the event and ask them to send it tomorrow. And then you call a week later and a month later, and you end up with about 85% to 90% return.
Wow. Alex, I'd love to know a little bit about, actually, Marc, I'm going to start with you, and then all of you dig in. But you were talking a little bit about cutting up the video, and I'm actually, as the person who, when Gary Vee was doing Winemaker or Wine Library TV long form, at Revision 3, I was the one who started cutting it up short form. I was way ahead of my time. It makes a lot more sense now than it did back then. But what's your process for doing that? And for all of you, how do you think about taking that long form and creating short form, maybe going from wide long form to tall short form and getting it out there? What are you using?
I mean, my first thing I want to say is I want to cut the time between hitting record and hitting publish. And I really want to stress that, because I'm hearing about sending out the kits and all these other things, and what I'm seeing here at this show, to be a little counter, culture, is a lot of hardware. But for me, I want to cut out all of those components as much as possible. At the end of the day, the most popular record button is a phone in your pocket and probably the Zoom recorder. So I want to remove as much as possible out of the equation when it comes to the editing room and everything that has to happen in post-production, having a little bit of foresight in the planning of the content and the story itself, and then live editing. So for me, why I decided to jump into the bandwagon of Cinamaker was I can edit while I talk, and I can do it completely remotely as well. I can have somebody connect to my computer and be switching cameras without being in the room. So I don't have to leave my house, I don't have to do all of that post-editing work, and I can focus on the end result, which is content. All of this is about creating content, creating stories, right? So we're focused so much on the hardware and the quality, and is it coming through this cable or this thing, or HDMI or NDI or whatever it is, and I just, for me, it's removing that thought process out of the equation and focusing on, am I telling the best possible story, and how do I make that as effective as possible, right? Making content with hooks or all that kind of stuff.
And you're nodding over here.
Ultimately that's what it's about. But we're looking at, we make clips from our editor today, but we were showing off in our booth some of our new AI features, but we're basically taking 2 hours of content, running it through AI, getting back a summary, and automating the clips from there. And that's really how, you know, the automation of this is going to help people get content out faster.
And that's where it's going.
Right. I think that during the creation of an event, we are producing artifacts constantly, and it's just about how we can mine that out of the experience to minimize the time to publishing that out to the users, as you said. So I think that, you know, having access to transcriptions, having access to metadata, who was speaking when, can that create a timeline for me out of that data? Things that I think Cinamaker is doing really well in that area, all really important.
And I have to admit that I'm going to be a little contrary in that I don't cut my stuff down ever. I make content. I make a lot of short content, but I make short content or I make long content. I'm really ADD, and I'm really specific about if I'm gonna watch something for 3 minutes, it better be good, you know. And instead of trying to squeeze something in, I design it that way. I design it to be short. I design it to be to the point. I'm going to tell the whole story inside of that, and I don't want to cobble it together. And so for the stuff that we do with office hours, it's 2 hours every day, 7 days a week that we put out, or 6 days a week we put it out. And I just leave it that way on YouTube. You know, we have we're bringing everybody in, and you can listen to it like a radio show. And for me, when I want to do shorter form, I'm going to design that content specifically for TikTok, specifically for shorts, or a VOD that's usually less than 7 minutes.
So being very format intentional versus like just cutting it up and trying to use like every part of the pig.
Yeah, I think that for me, content, there's a saying that content is king, and I will argue that community is king and content is the honeypot. So all I want to do is use content to bring people into a community, and then that's the thing that we're most interested in, is how do we use the content to generate that community. And when we look at the commoditization of content through AI, through all those other things, the content is going to become less and less valuable. But the community is always valuable. It's always been valuable, and it'll always be valuable.
So let's talk community a little bit. It's a really good point. Ben, when you think about building tools for creators, how do you think about, and big companies as well, how do you think about bringing those community elements in?
I think it's critically important, especially as just from a collaborative production standpoint, but actually in the distribution of that content and the stories that are told after that, whether through comments or additional follow-on videos.
And Andy, on your side, I mean, you've had a chat bar, you've had other things in there. You can raise your hand on Zoom. But how do you think about building new areas of community to make it even more of a connection between the speakers and the audience?
And that connection is the key word. You know, we often say that that's what Zoom's all about at the end of the day, is connecting people to each other. And I think that we're entering into the age of interactivity, and we're doing that at a global scale. So whether it's chat, Q&A, reactions, raise hands, things like that, but being able to scale the ability to feel like I have a personal investment as an audience member in content that is going global to millions of people, and yet maintains the intimacy of that one-to-one experience. That, to us, being able to capitalize on those artifacts and give people a vested personal interest in the content is the key.
Go ahead, Alex.
And, for us, it's all about participation. So how do we have members of a community become part of what we're doing? So at the highest level, if they're just watching. At the next level, I built my own Q&A system, so it allows them to ask questions, to vote on those questions. It has a very robust back end that allows us to distribute it among the panelists, allows us to manage all of that. It even drives all the graphics and everything else that we're doing. But that allows us to have a really tight relationship with the viewers. Then we have, from there we have after hours. So office hours is 2 hours a day. After hours is 24/7. So it's a Zoom room that people can just kind of go in and hang out, tech support things, so on and so forth. And then from there we have Discord and everything else. But the idea is to provide lots of different mediums for our members to, discuss and to also contribute to each other's projects.
I'll add that I think the secret sauce to community is also authenticity, right? So the authenticity is when I have an idea, like as a creator, as a storyteller, if I can go very quickly from, wow, I have this idea, I was just listening online, somebody made a comment, and I had a rise in emotion, where I had like a feeling where I'm like, I really want to answer this right here, right now. Again, the ability to go from record to publish is the fastest way for me to build that authenticity and then to consistently have that conversation. And then if people want to know the secret of scaling online, I built a network of 300 million followers, I have pages of a bunch of stuff, and none of that matters. all that we did was consistently publish, consistently make content that was speaking to our relevant audience, and then staying in your lane a little bit more, right? A lot of people are trying to do everything and be the source of all things. I think why office hours and other things work is you're really focusing on that niche, that 1,000 true fan audience, and then growing from there. And that's where that community vibe is felt. And anyway.
Yep.
And to Andy's point, the interactivity is really where we're evolving, and as we develop interactive elements and work parts of Zoom's SDK into the application. So it's about the ultimate engagement between the audience and the hosts, and how you can facilitate that.
We were doing a bunch of training, and so we wanted to see, so we started doing eye tracking. This is about a decade ago. So we tracked people's eyes and their usage, and what we found, we were trying to figure out like how do we build the training and what does it look like? And one of the things that we found is that if you talk for about 6.5 minutes without interacting with the audience, without having interaction, 75% of your viewers will switch from active to passive listening.
Yep.
They're checking their email, they're doing other things. If you put up a slide without the person, it's 60 seconds. That they're gonna drop off and start doing something else. And so, for us, that was like, but basically, if they're active listening, they're 3 times more likely to be absorbing the information. And so, that's one of the reasons, like office hours, we get up and we just answer questions. So we're changing gears every 2 minutes.
All right, so everyone, we're going to do a little bit of a test here. Stare at the audience.
Right.
Okay, y'all, we're staring at you.
It was a huge part of what we did was to learn that you can't, all the presentations people do online, not useful.
You got to just jump in. All right, we're going to shift gears just a little bit. Andy, it's great to have somebody from Zoom here. You guys, made like 27,000 announcements, I think it's a show. But why don't you talk a little bit about some of the more cool ones that sort of relate to what we're doing here?
Absolutely. So we took the core technology that we use to build our products and our production tools, and we opened them to developers, and including Cinamaker as well, who announced Studio HD Recorder for Zoom. So the way we think about the media market is creators, producers, and broadcasters. And we think there's different personas in there, but they have overlapping needs. And so we announced on Friday a handful of developers who are using our SDKs to bring Zoom directly into their products. And I think Cinamaker has been a long time, example of what can be done when you leverage these SDKs to the benefit, being able to call in remote guests directly into the switcher and have that be a seamless experience, mobile optimized experience, being able to capture the chat, Q&A reactions, and now with the recording features that you guys announced, it's really leveraging the capabilities that we have as a core platform, but opening it up so that you can use the tools that you want to use and the workflows that you know and love, and you don't have the Zoom stuff on the side that you have to figure out how to cram it into that workflow. Zoom's natively compatible with it by opening up our technology.
Marc, how would you use this in your production process? How will it change it? How will it make it better?
I think the best thing is access. The biggest thing that this enables is that there's people all over the globe who want to chime in, and sometimes there's a topic that just came out and I can capitalize on that topic, I can join that topic and participate in that conversation. But that person, I'm based in Montreal, that person is maybe in California. So now how am I going to bring this person in, have a show that's engaging, and make it as simple as possible for them to join, right? And everyone understands how to open up a Zoom link, they click, they're there, that's all they need to do. They don't need to know a bunch of complicated workflows or processes, they don't have to participate in that at all in any way, shape, or form. And then having that be engaging, but also having the in-studio component, being able to switch to different camera angles, being able to bring on, a screen share, or play a video on a screen, or whatever it is, that's where I find the content is particularly engaging in a different way.
And Alex, you're all about the engagement. How does this change or enhance what you've already been doing?
Well, I think that the big thing is that the constant updates to Zoom ISO for us are the biggest thing. So for us, we're able to, Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC are 30% of our show. We are, maybe more, because we're tying into every part of the Zoom infrastructure. We're pulling up to 20 people out of Zoom, throwing them into a traditional, a more traditional pipeline. We're using Zoom ISO to take using Dante to take all the audio out. We can now process it, resync it. So we're in the process right now, within the next 2 months, we're going to be moving it into HDR 5.1. So literally having a Zoom conversation where the participants and everything else is getting spread out into 5.1 and streaming to YouTube. And so the thing is that all of these tools allow us to build a broadcast that is at least as good as what we see in traditional media. And we really couldn't do it until we had Zoom ISO. That was the thing that, we could do a lot of stuff that it's pretty good. You know, we're doing the best we can. And what really took it over the top was being able to send stuff out over tradition, you know, Dante, SDI for us. We're kind of heavy metal folks. To do that. So.
Yep. And Ben, on your side, you guys partner with Zoom. You've got new stuff that you've been rolling out too. Talk about how that's a game changer and what you're doing there.
Sure. Well, we explored working with a number of vendors to enable our remote production capability. We ultimately settled on Zoom due to the reliability of their global infrastructure and the familiarity that everybody has. For about the past year, we first built our remote guest interface to bring guests into our productions and allow studio guests to interact with remote guests, or even have a remote producer who has all their guests coming in through Zoom, handling it there. We've evolved it we have a new product we just announced here with Zoom that we're calling Studio HD Recorder, and this allows you to get studio grade recordings from your Zoom sessions. So we've taken the Zoom SDK, put a client on it. You can run it Windows, Mac, Android, iOS. You join a Zoom meeting as normal and conduct your meeting, but at the same time, a much higher bit rate, higher quality recording is being stored on your computer, on your local device, and then being more slowly streamed back into the cloud. So afterwards, you have the highest quality recording that you have locally. So we think it's really a game changer, and that technology is very much going to quickly be high bit rate streaming capabilities, where that's going to evolve to.
Okay, Marc, then
I just wanted to add that the other thing that was for me a game changer was the output to Zoom. So being able to bring my multiple camera production to Zoom so that somebody who's watching a Zoom meeting and is participating in watching a webinar of any type or kind is now engaged because it's cutting again, right? You hear Mr. Beast, we have to cut every 3 seconds. Okay, maybe that's a little bit much for a webinar, but at the end of the day, having multiple angles and being able to change the Zoom setting without having to touch anything in Zoom, without having to hit the screen share button on that is also a game changer.
When you have the low latency that the Zoom webinar can provide, that interactivity is a lot easier, because now 150 milliseconds after you said it, they heard it, and you can engage in that. You're not waiting 30 seconds for it to get through the traditional CDNs, right? We have that low latency access to the audience that helps you as a creator connect with them and build real moments together.
One of the things that we do a lot of, that once you start doing it, it's really hard to go back to traditional pipelines, is we use a lot of the Zoom rooms. We have meetings. So for the people who are going to be on the show, whether it's going back into a Zoom webinar or it's going to YouTube or it's going to wherever, we'll create a bunch of breakout rooms. And we have one that is the kind of the mixing room. So everyone comes in, they go and hang out together. Then we take them to hair and makeup, and we make sure that they're framed and they sound good. Then we move them to the green room, and that's where they get to hang out, but now they all look good. And then we move them into the stage, and then you can take something with, whether it's Zoom ISO or Cinamaker or whatever, you just drop into that stage and you can pull all those feeds out. But we call it the Emerald City Protocol. Because it's like the little thing where they go from this thing and then your hair and then we do the thing. And the Emerald City Protocol is how we move people through to get them ready for the show. And it just transforms the quality of the shows, because there's a process, there's a ritual that has people go through that. And it actually, significantly improves the quality of the conversation.
Okay, so how long till we have a ChatGPT makeup artist that you send to them to actually get them to print their hair? I joke about it, but I think we have a video to show, right, of some of this?
Yeah, we've got a short video that...
What if creating high-quality remote video content is as simple as inviting people to a Zoom call? Well, it can be. Cinamaker is perfect for creating remote video podcasts and shows, evergreen webinars, trainings, and presentations, and enhancing your meetings while allowing you to record them all and publish wherever you'd like. Here's how. Simply open up Cinamaker, start a new session, connect your Zoom account, start a meeting, share the link with your remote guests, and turn on their cameras. And bringing in Zoom guests in high definition quality. With the Media tab, you can bring in anything from images, videos, and even bring in multiple guests all on screen at the same time. Apply simple to use templates to upgrade your video content. You can also spice up your Zoom sessions with Cinamaker's direct ability to output your multi-camera production directly to your Zoom meetings, webinars, or events. Plus, you can multi-stream live to all your favorite social media platforms individually or all at once. Another powerful integration we've enabled with Zoom is the ability to be a remote producer. If you are a videographer, producer, or video service provider, you can use Cinamaker's remote production feature to create content with hosts and guests in multiple locations, all connected through Zoom. It's never been easier to create high-quality content for your clients without having to leave your own workspace. If you're not a seasoned video editor, or even if you are, you can produce your content directly in-app without any video editing experience. Now you can either switch in real time and make your cuts live, or enter overwrite mode in Cinamaker's revolutionary in-app editor, where you can change cameras, audio, and media all at once. And it's as simple as clicking on the different cameras as you play it back. This allows you to easily correct any mistakes because every single camera angle was recorded the entire time, allowing you to edit, re-edit, and cut anything you'd like. Now I know what you're thinking. What about the remote video quality? Through our integration with Zoom Studio Mode, it allows Cinamaker to pull full 1080p HD, isolated camera recordings right in our editor to make your remote content have studio level quality. Oh, and by the way, if you're having a hard time finding an epic moment in your Zoom meeting, then you can search and edit with Cinamaker's text-based editing tool. And say goodbye to poorly recorded remote content. Record and edit multiple Zoom guests in one simple app and create exceptional video content in minutes, not days or weeks. Download for free today.
So cool. So tell me, how easy is this really? I mean, you guys have used this. I know you're going to say it's amazingly easy. Of course it is. But talk about how you give this to somebody in the real world who's not a video editor, not a producer, and just say, produce this and make it beautiful. What does it take? Go ahead.
I think I'm the best position to answer this. At the end of the day, if you look around here, just there's iPhones that are being used to record this stage using Cinamaker. There's a DSLR at the back. I mean, realistically, the easiest way to get anybody to learn how to become a video producer and video editor of any type and kind is to, number one, use equipment that they already have, right? So to me, that's the game changer there. And then the other thing is you're able to cut and edit by just clicking and then watching in playback mode. So it's as simple as, can you watch a video? And if you can you choose which camera angle you want to go to by clicking? Now, that's, to me, the easiest workflow. And I also think it's disruptive because it enables others to now do it without being in the room with me. So, you know, my video editor is here at the show with us, his name's Kyler. He lives in BC, I live in Montreal. He remote connects to my computer and literally, as I'm talking, switches to different camera angles. And if for whatever reason he wasn't there, he couldn't be there, he can do it all in post later because all the camera angles are recorded. So I think that's where you're by having every camera angle being recorded, you're also eliminating the possibility of mistakes because you can go change it later, cut it and recut it multiple times. So yeah, it's definitely gotten way easier than it once was. It was way faster than taking the cards out of all the cameras and using the multi-cam mode and the whole thing and Adobe and all that kind of stuff. It's great, but I think it's democratizing it in a powerful way. And where AI and the ChatGPTs and these types of things are going to come in is now this is going to start. It's going to start switching for you. It's going to start recommending clips for you. It's going to start removing ums and ahs and a bunch of other stuff for you. So that's where this is going to get easier and easier and easier over time too.
Okay, no, so I have a question for you, Ben. It's probably facetious, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We're talking a little bit about AI right there, and we're thinking about Mr. Beast switching every 3 seconds. Now, my Tesla has a Beast mode for switching lanes, if you've ever used it. Where's the AI Mr. Beast mode that's like their little AI assistant that goes in? It's like, just let Mr. Beast do the editing, and it just switches it every 3 seconds. Is that going to happen?
It's around the corner.
Oh no.
Yeah, for us, and I'm sure many others, there's been a lot of nobody wants to do anything. They don't want to work, they want it to work for them, and the industry's getting really close to having some very impressive automation.
Yeah. Alex, are you ready for Mr. Beast mode?
Well, I think that there's a percentage of people that are cutting that are really artists, and AI is not going to replace that anytime soon. But there is, how do we produce these, the stuff that we do, for instance, when we get up every morning and jump in, we have 20, 30 people that are working on office hours every morning. So they're all over the world, they're cutting, they're prepping, they're doing all these other things. But we do have to figure out, how do we get to a show that's 1 or 2? So a lot of times what we're looking for, it's not that we want to make the main show 1 or 2. We love the creature comforts of having a big team that's working on all of these things and learning how all this works. And again, for really high-end work, we still need that team to be there. One of the things, I was talking to a Boeing engineer, and I said, how can the plane land itself? How good is it? And he said, oh, it's better than the pilot. And I was like, and you know, like it lands at way, and this is 10 years ago. And I said, so why don't you just have the plane land all the time? And it was like, because the pilot would forget how to land, you know, and then where are you, you know? And so I think that it's important to keep on having people build those skills and continue to get to that top level. But at the same time, how do we have these great conversations that are building community, that are putting those things together, and not have it take 25 people, have it take one person that can turn it on. There's a lot of things that we can do, like we can make decisions that when the question pops up, we should be seeing this. When we show the question, we should see this. When people are talking, we can auto switch between those. But there's a lot of little things. People are different. Like, so one of the things we learned how to do with some other software that we built was we had attack control over every person. Because some people make these funny little noises before they talk, and some people just start talking. And we had to change the attack on every person. We had a little dial, literally a physical dial for Hangouts because it had an API. So we would turn this little dial, and we're working on getting it into using Zoom ISO to do this, where we turn the dials up, so we'd say this person's like a 1 second attack, and this person's like a 0.2 second attack, and so that we could, and it literally just smooths out the whole conversation. So I think the real power is having a human being making critical decisions that are then supported by the AI to execute those decisions effectively.
Very, very cool. Go ahead.
I think, you know, the creator knows what they want to make, but sometimes they don't always know exactly what steps need to be taken in order to get to that outcome, right? And I think that this is an area where AI can be a huge assistant to us and say, all right, well, how do you want this to work? And then it can go ahead and take the steps to help you actually get to the outcome and the result that you're looking for. On the Zoom side, we have our Zoom IQ, which is sort of our AI platform. A lot of interesting things going on in that space. And also, I think the ability to use it as a curation tool, because a lot of content is curation and it's understanding out of all this available media, how do I find the things that are most relevant to me and my audience and connecting them that way? And so I think that these are areas where, you know, we can continue to see short-term innovation and then long-term success strategy in the creator market.
And I'll add that I think the AI is going to be, sure, you'll have the Mr. Beast mode AI, but then you'll also have AI that's maybe more specific to the type of show that you're creating as well, right? And the AI will learn from you, and you can also kind of give it a look and a feel where different AIs might kind of cut in different ways. So, you know, Mr. Beast doing that for YouTube and doing that for a younger audience makes a ton of sense. But somebody who's 60 years old wants to, you know, maybe they don't want to cut every 3 seconds. They want a different kind of show. They want a longer format show. So I think the AI is there to assist, but at the end of the day, it's about the creators telling better stories, and that's what we have to learn how to do.
The one thing I will say is that the amount of information that we're going to have available to us is going to be stunning. You know, even things like we were talking about city council meetings. You know, within a couple of years, someone's going to just link onto Zoom and just have the audio go in, and that thing's going to go back. It's going to transcribe it, translate it into 12 languages, put all the languages back in with auto voice all those languages, summarize it, put it up on the web, and everybody in town will know that. And that's a little thing that it's not taking work away. It is literally making information available that no one would ever do.
There's a whole category of content that's not created because the creators don't have the ability to make it happen, right? Or the audiences don't have a through path to be able to quickly get to that content. And this is going to help level that playing field out.
So I want to know, for that town meeting, and I'm watching it at home, can I then turn all of the aldermen into my favorite Disney characters?
Yes, you can.
We have time for one question from the audience. Does anybody have a question for these guys? Yeah, we've got a question right here. Thank you for sitting up front.
Yeah, so just in terms of your community and the town hall stuff, so when will we be voting via facial recognition?
You mean voting, political voting?
Yeah.
I think it would. That's a political question, not a technical one. Like it's literally, you know, technically an online solution would be more secure if you were using biometrics, if you're using those things than what it is now. It's political willpower.
Cool.
It's just up to our politicians.
All right, one last question before we break, and this is for Andy and Ben. Great stuff you guys are doing now. Give us a little peek into the future, like what can we expect at next year's NAB, or maybe in a couple months? Anything?
On the Zoom side, our continued focus is on taking our core technology and opening it to the market. So I think you're going to see continued integrations, and then as we build new things on our side, we're not just hoarding it and keeping it for ourselves, right? We're opening it up so that those tools are available to folks like the Cinamaker team, that they can then go take it and run with it down the field and make really interesting products for you. So we've had 7 integrations at this show. I think you'll see 7 times 7 in the next year as we continue to open those up.
All right, last one, Ben. Give it to us, and then tell us where your booth is. It's down there somewhere, right?
Yes, way down there. So the answer to the question very simply is cloud and automation, and it's going to be transformative. Cinamaker booth is very back of this hall. It's C9121. Please come see us. We've got some really neat demos of hybrid production workflows and our beta of our new software showing off our text editor and a couple other things.
All right, thank you very much, Andy, Marc, Alex, and Ben, and thank you all for being a great audience. Enjoy the rest of it. Thanks to NAB, and thanks to the great production crew, and we will see you all here, I'm sure, tomorrow.